Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight: the effects of former Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro's capture are felt around the world. President Trump now vowing to fix up Western countries that serve as proxies for American adversaries. Mario Two at the White House. The man who was imprisoned under the Maduro regime confronts the former Venezuelan dictator in court. Arian Pazdar has the story of the man who interrupted the arraignment of Nicolás Maduro to send him a message. Lawmakers are set to vote on a minibus bill to advance government funding before the January 31st deadline. Will Congress find bipartisanship, or will we see another government shutdown? Luis Martinez breaks it down. The CDC makes major changes to vaccine recommendations for the first time ever, dropping several recommendations. Lena Weiskup tells us more about the changes. ICE launches a new operation in Minnesota. Officials are calling it the largest one yet. Jason Blair has the details. And the Department of Health and Human Services is responding to the mounting fraud allegations in Minnesota. They're proposing to repeal Biden-era childcare mandates that officials say allowed fraud to occur. Jack Bradley, the update.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump touting the military successes of Operation Absolute Resolve as he speaks to House Republicans ahead of the midterms. And the Trump administration going beyond Venezuela, laying out its national security strategy. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mario Two at the North Lawn of the White House. Mari, good evening.
Tiff, good evening. Yes, that's right. President Trump today at the Kennedy Center this morning, speaking to House Republicans about the upcoming year. This is a midterm year. This is just days after Operation Absolute Resolve, the successful capture of former Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro and his wife. And in the days since the operation, the Trump administration has really doubled down on what President Trump is now calling the Donroe Doctrine, laying out not only their vision for the future of Venezuela, but connecting the dots to their broader national security strategy. President Trump vows to fix up not just Venezuela, but any Western country that serves as a proxy for American enemies. And case in point, the White House is now confirming what President Trump said on Sunday, that he wants to acquire Greenland as a national security priority. The president touting the success of the military operation earlier today. Take a look.
But the United States proved once again that we have the most powerful, most lethal, most sophisticated, and most fearsome. It's a fearsome military on planet Earth.
The effects of Maduro's capture beginning to be felt around the world. Venezuelan oil shipments to China are on hold, and President Trump predicts the fall of Cuba's communist regime.
Cuba is ready to fall. Yes. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela.
Cuba now reporting that at least 32 of the 80 people killed in U.S. strikes were Cuban military.
Cubans, mostly Cubans, but many, many killed.
It was Cubans that guarded Maduro. He was not guarded by Venezuelan bodyguards. He had Cuban bodyguards. In terms of their internal intelligence, who spies on who inside to make sure there are no traitors, those are all Cubans.
The Maduro regime was long propped up by Cuba's armed forces and counterintelligence agencies. And Cuba sent tens of thousands of doctors, nurses, and sports figures to Venezuela in exchange for oil discounts. Maduro himself went to Cuba to train as a labor leader, attending a Communist Party training institute called the Nico Lopez School.
But he's a violent guy. And he's killed millions of people. He's tortured. They have a torture chamber in the middle of Caracas that they're closing up.
The Trump administration insisting they're not at war with Venezuela, but rather righting two injustices.
And up until recently, that oil reserve was exploited by our adversaries to fund their ambitions, to fund their militaries, to fund their terrorism, and just as importantly, our adversaries no longer have the ability to use Venezuela to export terrorism around the globe.
Meanwhile, President Trump eulogizing Congressman Doug LaMalfa.
He was the leader of the Western Caucus, a fierce champion on California water issues. He was great on water. He wanted to release the water, he'd scream at him. And a true defender of American children. He was a defender of everybody.
President Trump says that LaMalfa passed away yesterday at 65 years old. His death now brings it tightens the thin House majority to 218 Republicans and 213 Democrats. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for those updates. What's it like trying to survive in Maduro's Venezuela as a candidate for the opposition party? A Venezuelan man who fled to the U.S. confronted the former socialist leader during his arraignment in New York City. That's after suffering political persecution in his home country. Our sister media, the Epoch Times, was at the scene when he spoke to reporters. NTD's Arian Pazdar has more.
Pablo Escobar was trained to be one day the president and then control all the areas. That dream became true in Venezuela.
An anti-Maduro activist in New York City, comparing former socialist leader Nicolás Maduro to late drug lord Pablo Escobar. He says Maduro is a drug lord as well, but one who managed to take over an entire country. Pedro Rojas, a self-described political prisoner in Venezuela, yelled at Maduro during the arraignment on Monday.
Maduro looks straight at me. I have no fear. I speak for 40 million Venezuelans who are happy today because Maduro was arrested.
Rojas told Maduro that he's not an innocent man, as he claims, and that Maduro is guilty of all the charges brought by the U.S. Justice Department. Maduro and his wife are charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, drug trafficking, and weapons charges. They pled not guilty to all charges. Rojas was asked what kind of consequences he wants to see against Maduro.
That the full force of the law will be applied. Today, Venezuela has political prisoners who have been sentenced to 20 years, to 18 years, to 14 years. Mothers in Venezuela have been arrested because of this bloodthirsty man.
Rojas says he was jailed for almost half a year in 2019 for allegedly attempting to harm Maduro. That's after he tried to run for Congress for an opposition party in 2015. The man translating for Rojas says running for the opposition in Maduro's Venezuela had two possible outcomes: to die or to end up in prison. Rojas sent the following message to President Trump regarding the future of Venezuela.
Us Venezuelans are willing to return to our national territory immediately, to rebuild the country and to work with North America, to make America great and make it so that Venezuela can become an exceptional country.
Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado also says she wants to return to Venezuela. According to Machado, she spent 16 months in hiding before escaping Venezuela last month to receive her Nobel Peace Prize, which she dedicated to President Trump. Florida Senator Rick Scott says he spoke with Machado on Tuesday.
The first thing she said is she's so appreciative that President Trump took the action he did to give the children and the families of Venezuela the opportunity for freedom. Number one, she said we've got to make sure that the political prisoners in Venezuela, including Americans, are immediately released.
According to the senator, Machado also wants to fight the repression taking place in Venezuela. The remaining members of the Maduro regime recently ordered police to arrest anyone supporting the U.S. military operation in the country. According to Machado, people are being silenced and 14 journalists were detained within just 24 hours. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Congress is off to a quick start with several important votes already teed up during their first weekend session. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez breaks down what we expect to see this week on Capitol Hill.
The House of Representatives is expected to vote this week on $174 billion of government funding for fiscal year 2026. The minibus would include interior and energy, water, and commerce, science, and justice funding bills.
We have a January 30 deadline to fund the government. And nobody should want a repeat of the recent Democrat shutdown at the end of this month. So, Mr. President, let's get the rest of this year's appropriations bills done so we can turn our attention to our other responsibilities and to getting the next fiscal year's appropriations bills done in a timely fashion.
The Senate is also expected to vote on a Democrat-sponsored privilege resolution, a War Powers Act resolution that, if passed, would prohibit President Trump from taking any further military actions in Venezuela without congressional approval.
The administration's story keeps changing by the hour, even after Secretary Rubio spent all day Sunday trying to clean up Trump's mess. The president went right back to repeat that the U.S. will now apparently run Venezuela for a while. On and on and on. No plan, no clarity, only chaos.
Also this week, the full House and Senate separately will be briefed by Attorney General Pam Bondi, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Radcliffe, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, on the Venezuela Operation Absolute Resolve. President Trump also met today with House Republicans at the Kennedy Center during their annual retreat meeting and dedicated his speech to Republican Congressman Doug LaMalfa, who passed away today at age 65. GOP Congressman Doug LaMalfa represented parts of Northern California. The passing of Congressman Doug LaMalfa leaves the House Republican majority with only 218 seats after also the stepping down of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is the smallest House majority in the history of the United States. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The CDC has made major changes to its vaccine recommendations, more closely aligning with norms in other developed countries. NTD's Melina Weisskopf brings us the details from Washington, D.C.
The CDC is narrowing the number of shots recommended to all children. The vaccines dropped from the broadly recommended schedule include influenza, rotavirus, hepatitis A, and the vaccine to address meningitis. This is in addition to the CDC's previously dropped recommendations for vaccines for hepatitis B and COVID-19. While the new schedule is meant to address the general public, the CDC still keeps some recommendations in place for high-risk groups. Vaccines that are removed from the updated schedule will still be available for parents and covered through federal insurance programs like the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid. So the goal here is not to make vaccines less available, but to give parents more transparency and control over whether or not to let their children get them in the first place. Though some health experts are concerned about the broader impacts of these new guidelines, like if it will create confusion or what it could mean for public health.
Could have been done, perhaps, is a more public review so that people can understand what the changes are and whether they agree with them or not.
From another point of view, one California-based pediatrician, Dr. Joel Warsh, clarified to the Epoch Times that, quote, reducing universal recommendations doesn't mean vaccines are being banned or declared unsafe. It means the CDC is finally acknowledging that not every vaccine has the same risk-benefit profile for every child. The Health and Human Services Deputy Secretary defended his new schedule, expressing that it's questionable that the number of shots recommended has only increased over the years.
They've gone from 23 doses for 7 diseases in 1980 to more than 80 doses for 18 diseases now. That's a huge number of vaccines. Many parents are concerned that they're injecting their young, innocent children with a lot of medicines. They're not sure about the risks and benefits of all these.
The CDC consulted with Denmark, Germany, Japan, and vaccine scientists at the CDC and FDA to make the changes. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
ICE is sending 2,000 agents to Minnesota for their, quote, largest operation to date. And Hilton Hotel says it has removed a Minneapolis hotel from its systems after it refused to let ICE agents book rooms. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more.
We have the largest immigration operation ever taking place right now.
ICE Director Todd Lyons says that agents are on the ground in Minneapolis starting a new operation as part of the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration.
HSI agents, as you've seen in the media, have been going door to door to a lot of these suspected, companies that are not only hiring illegal aliens that shouldn't even be in the country, but also being involved in potential human smuggling, human trafficking cases, but also looking at these fraud cases as well.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says in Minneapolis this morning, under President Trump, we will expose and deliver accountability for the rampant fraud and criminality happening in Minnesota. Officials say the operation is going to last for 30 days. The Department of Homeland Security has posted videos of activity in Minneapolis. In one, Noem says a man being arrested is a, quote, criminal illegal alien from Ecuador who has an active warrant for murder and sexual assault in Ecuador. This announcement comes as fraud investigations involving state-funded social services have ramped up in Minnesota.
$19 billion at least they've stolen from Minnesota and from the United States. It's actually more from the United States.
Hilton Hotels says it has removed a Minneapolis hotel from its systems after it refused to rent rooms to DHS and ICE agents. The Department of Homeland Security raised the issue on Monday when they posted an email from the hotel telling them that, quote, "We are not allowing ICE or any immigration agents to stay on our property. If you are with DHS or immigration, let us know and we will have to cancel your reservation." Hilton Hotels apologized and released a statement saying the Minneapolis hotel is independently operated and not acting in line with the company's values, and that changes will be made. However, on Tuesday, Hilton said they will be removing the Minneapolis hotel from its systems. Hilton says the independent hotel owner had assured us that they had fixed this problem and published a message confirming this. A recent video clearly raises concerns that they are not meeting our standards and values. As such, we are taking immediate action to remove this hotel from our systems. Hilton is and always has been a welcoming place for all. Jason Blair, NTD News.
Federal officials are moving to freeze over $10 billion in child care funding to 5 states. It's over concerns that the benefits may have gone to illegal immigrants. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The Trump administration is moving to freeze over $10 billion in funding for child care and social services to 5 states over fraud allegations. A Health and Human Services official told me that the freeze would affect California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York. Now this, coupled with the department's recent announcement that it's freezing child care payments pending documentation for other states, is meant to curb fraud, which was brought into the spotlight by that in Minnesota.
Incompetent state officials, through negligence or by design, for years have stood by as taxpayer money was diverted into the pockets of politically connected cronies. Governor Walz's administration is taking away money from working families and giving it to fake daycare scams.
Democratic officials in several states criticized the move, warning it could harm low-income families. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz says that the news about the fraud is being hijacked for political gain.
For the last several years, an organized group of criminals have sought to take advantage of this state's generosity. And even as we make progress in the fight against the fraudsters, we now see an organized group of political actors seeking to take advantage of a crisis.
Walz also announced on Monday that he's dropping his re-election bid for a 3rd term as governor.
Every minute that I spend defending my own political interest would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota.
The HHS is also proposing to repeal Biden-era mandates that they said allowed for widespread fraud to occur in child care systems.
These are not victimless crimes. Every dollar stolen is a dollar stolen from children and families who need those services the most.
The proposed rule would repeal requirements that child care providers receive funds before providing care. It would require payments based on verified attendance rather than enrollment. And it ends what's called pre-funding guaranteed seats at child care centers without competition.
This restores parental choice and brings back market incentives that reward legitimate, high-quality providers.
Attention's now being brought to other states. President Trump took to Truth Social on Tuesday, saying that fraud is worse in California and an investigation has begun. Now, if we look back at California, widespread fraud has occurred under Governor Gavin Newsom's watch. State officials said that back in 2021, the Employment Development Department, which was in charge of distributing COVID pandemic relief funds, paid out up to $30 billion in improper payments to unverified sources. And get this, over $810 million went to prison inmates. But it looks like the White House is working to probe for more. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Coming up, a human rights group reports that the death toll in Iran's protests has risen to 36. Meanwhile, Israel's foreign minister makes the country's first official visit after recognizing Somaliland. Jason Perry with the details. And comments by President Trump on taking over Greenland ruffle some feathers in Europe, with leaders backing Denmark and urging collective Arctic security through NATO. That and more when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A human rights group reports that the death toll in Iran's protests has risen to 36. And in another development, Israel's foreign minister visits Somaliland just days after Israel became the first country to recognize the African territory. NTD's Jason Perry has the update.
It's been over a week since protests in Iran began, and they don't appear to be slowing down. On Tuesday, residents upset with the country's failing economy held a sit-in at Tehran's Grand Bazaar. However, the demonstrators were later seen running away after Iranian police fired tear gas at the crowd. One can of tear gas was seen thrown in the opposite direction, back toward police. As of Tuesday, the U.S.-based human rights activist news agency reported that 36 people had been killed, including 2 members of Iran's security forces during demonstrations in the country. The demonstration at the Grand Bazaar is symbolic because it's the same place where protests and strikes were held before the fall of the former Iranian government in 1979. At that time, $1 US was traded for about 70 Iranian rials. However, it now takes about 1.4 million rials to equal $1. Some residents commented on Iran's new policy to provide $7 per month to citizens.
For those who are truly eligible and genuinely in need of even that $7, it does at least cover a small part of their needs. It does help after all. From my perspective as a citizen, though, it doesn't help much.
In my view, the government saw that they couldn't rein in the inflation, so they said, let's give people $7 so that we can somehow absorb the pressure to hold it back. I mean, it's like a temporary painkiller.
Others have pointed out that the Iranian regime has been paying hundreds of millions of dollars every year to terrorist groups such as Hamas in the Gaza Strip and Hezbollah in Lebanon. On the same day, the Israeli Air Force reportedly struck Hamas and Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure in Lebanon. Lebanese residents were seen inspecting the damage from the Israeli airstrikes. And in another development, Israel's foreign minister traveled to Somaliland. Israel recently became the first country to recognize Somaliland, a territory that broke away from Somalia in 1991. Many countries in the region, including Somalia, have opposed Israeli recognition of Somaliland. Israel has said they will pursue cooperation in agriculture, health, technology, and the economy. Somaliland is in a strategic position near the Iran-backed Houthi terrorist group in Yemen. And some believe the Israel and Somaliland partnership could one day lead to security cooperation between the two nations. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Comments by President Trump about potentially taking control of Greenland are drawing reactions from Europe. Leaders from several major European powers issued a joint statement today backing Denmark and Greenland, saying the Arctic island belongs to its people. The leaders stressed that decisions concerning Greenland should be made by Denmark and Greenland alone. They also said Arctic security must be handled collectively with NATO allies, including the United States. They said European nations have increased their military presence, activities, and investments in the region to deter adversaries. President Trump has repeatedly said the U.S. needs Greenland for national security purposes. Its strategic position between Europe and North America makes it critical to U.S. ballistic missile defense, and its mineral resources are seen as key to reducing reliance on Chinese exports. Greenland's prime minister said yesterday that his government wants stronger ties with Washington, adding residents should not fear an imminent U.S. takeover. What do everyday Americans make of President Trump's push to acquire Greenland? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
In the wake of Maduro's arrest, President Trump was talking about potentially taking over Greenland at some point. What are your thoughts on that?
Taking over Greenland, I'm not so sure if it's good for the country. Maybe Trump knows best. He seems to be right about everything.
If we have another place where America could, oversee these places out of our states, it'd be great. I think it'll just make our country better and the world better too.
NATO would have to go to war. When any member of NATO is attacked, all members have to go to their defense. That's just insane.
With Trump, you never quite know. Sometimes he's saying things to get leverage. Being a little unpredictable can be an advantage at times.
They're talking about Greenland being a strategic spot because we have our military base there, and China, Russia potentially having ships, floating around in the water. What do you make of that?
It's not our land. We cooperate with Denmark, and and do what we have to do. It's not our land. We can't just go take it.
I think we need to be first everywhere and in everything. So if we can get our hands on it first, then so be it.
Yeah, again, I would just think about the people of Greenland and ultimately what's in their best interest. You know, if they support what we're doing and are along for it. You know, the way I see it, the more people we can bring into the free world, the better. You know, if there's a will, there's a way. But, you know, I'm somebody, I want to bring as many people to the American Party as possible.
I think, yeah, we shouldn't let Russia or China overwhelm this country. We have to stay there and get more of our people there, military-wise, and yeah, I think it'll be better for our country.
Coming up, what should the process of rebuilding the Venezuelan economy and state look like, and what does the future of the nation hold? Jorge Gersati, a native Venezuelan and president of the Economic Inclusion Group, joins us to discuss when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Joining us now is Jorge Gersati, president of Economic Inclusion Group, a policy advisory firm with extensive expertise on how to approach the rebuilding of the Venezuelan economy and state. Jorge, thank you so much for joining us. First, as a Venezuelan yourself, what was your reaction to the U.S. operation and what this means for Venezuela going forward?
My reaction is that all the steps that Maduro take for all these years is what led to this inevitable outcome. Because for many years, Maduro have been turning Venezuela, that used to be a prosperous country, into a humanitarian crisis, into a national security threat for the US, a regional security threat for Latin America. So when I saw that outcome, I realized that this was the first step. And if everything goes well, if all the right decisions are made, eventually Venezuela will be a free and democratic nation once again.
And expanding on that, when it comes to improving Venezuela's economy, how important is security? Good law enforcement, national defense, and who will provide that security? The U.S.?
I believe that the most important thing for a peaceful transition is that we have security. Without security, you don't have economic development. Without security, you cannot have free and fair elections or political development. You can also not protect the people that will go to rebuild Venezuela. The people that will be in a transition government, the people that will go to the oil industry to rebuild the country. So I believe that security is the most essential factor. Who is going to provide this? It has to be an alliance, a partnership between the American government, who is the only institution capable of providing the know-how and the technicalities of the security, the people on the ground, and a group of experts, technicians, technocrats that could lead a transition government in Venezuela. If you have these three aspects, then you can rebuild the country.
I want to go back to your earlier point about policies, because many point to Venezuela as an example of failed socialist policies. Talk to us about the policies that led to Venezuela's current state, specifically why people are struggling so much economically and the living standard there.
Venezuela, for those in the audience who don't know, is the most vivid example of how socialism and corruption can destroy the country. Venezuela used to be one of the 20th richest countries in the world. Its GDP per capita used to be 2.5 times higher than Latin American average. And now is the poorest in the region. We have 80% of our people in poverty, 50% in extreme poverty. Which policies caused this mess? We had since 2003 currency controls, since 2017 price controls. We had expropriations of thousands of businesses, farms, investments. We had production quotas. So basically, Venezuela became a totally government-run economy in which bureaucrats decided what to produce, what to sell, if you can access dollars. So it became a totally controlled economy. When you take away people's economic freedom and you give these decisions to bureaucrats in the capital, then you have enormous levels of economic collapse and corruption.
And Jorge, there's been a lot of talk and focus on Venezuelan oil. What is the reality around this? How easy or hard is it to return that to global markets?
The reality is that Venezuela has a lot of oil reserves, but it will take time. It will take investment to bring back the oil industry. So Venezuela right now produces 30% of the amount of production of oil that we had 20 years ago. So we now produce less than 1 million barrels per day. We used to produce 3.5 million. To return to that, we need $60 billion on investment and a decade. Oil is not something that you can just bring back in a day or in a year. It takes time because you need to rebuild machinery and you need to really rebuild the operations on the country after 3 decades of not having investment. But at the same time, Venezuela has a lot of reserves, and Venezuela has the type of oil that the U.S. actually needs.
A lot to watch here for sure. Jorge Gerasati, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
In Doral, Florida, roughly 40% of the population is Venezuelan. Many fled the country under the rule of Hugo Chavez, and the exodus continued under Maduro. NTD's Chris Bobb spoke with the Venezuelan Americans about the dangers they faced back home.
For millions of Venezuelans, political involvement came with serious consequences: arrest, imprisonment, or intimidation. Many fled political persecutions and found safety in the United States. Many say that leaving was their only option.
I left Venezuela around 7 years ago because I suffered political persecution. In the year 2017, I was so involved in the demonstrations that were taking place in Venezuela, and because of that, me and some other friends were targeted. I have a really good friend who was put in prison by the Maduro regime. In the middle of the night, they broke into his house, and when that happened, well, I needed to escape and disappear because I knew for a fact that they were after me as well. I left the country and I came to America. I claimed asylum, and ever since I've arrived, I've been, speaking against socialism.
With food and water shortages and government control over even basic freedoms, he had to focus entirely on staying alive. There was no time left to think about anything else.
For me to go to take a shower, I needed to go first to a certain place in Caracas, fill a big water container after be doing a big line to get that, and then we'll go back home, warm the water. I mean, it's a whole process to do everything. So you're nullified as a person. They take away your individuality.
Armed pro-government gangs called colectivos kept people too scared to celebrate. That's why Venezuelans abroad say the streets of Caracas don't look anything like the celebrations we see here in Doral.
The most important something that happened in Venezuela right now is the group of the colectivos. The colectivos is a big gang in Venezuela that a regiment do or give arm or give gun to all those people, and they, it's in everywhere, to try to scare the people, and that you don't go out, you can celebrate anything here in this country.
I asked these Venezuelans if they had ever faced repression or threats back home.
Yes, I did. I came here very early, but I went back home when Chavez was in power. They followed me to the hotels. They tried to I got shot at. My vehicle got shot at. We faced scrutiny every time I traveled to Venezuela, to the point where I couldn't travel to Venezuela because my life was in danger. They even tried to follow me here home.
A lot of treatment to me, to my family, to my mother. The regiment. All the person in region. Well, that's very good question. The people's not look good, right? At the beginning, when I was there, they had a small group. They called círculos bolivarianos, but now it's colectivos, and now it's on a really force, the repression, force.
And one thing I want to say. Let this be a lesson to you guys here in the United States. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I fight every single day to make sure that we don't turn into Cuba, Venezuela, or Colombia, for that matter. This is the problem when you allow socialism and communism to come into your country. It destroys. It's like a cancer. It metastasizes, and it's so hard to get it out.
While there was joy at Maduro's capture, Venezuelans abroad stressed that real change through a return to democracy is what they're truly hoping for. Chris Bobb, NTD News, Doral, Florida.
What does Maduro's downfall mean for Venezuela, Latin America, and the cartels? And what should the U.S. do next? Hear from Paulo Figueiredo, journalist and grandson of a former Brazilian president, tonight on Capitol Report at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Coming up in the NFL, are the Baltimore Ravens looking for a new head coach after missing out on the playoffs? Dave Martin joins us to discuss when we return. Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on today. We have some college football, basketball news, as well as tennis. But let's start in the NFL, as there's some late-breaking news with the Ravens and head coach John Harbaugh reportedly parting ways after 18 seasons. Long time. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, I'm stunned. I mean, multiple outlets, though, are reporting this. Now, Harbaugh has been Baltimore's coach since 2008. Of those 18 seasons, he's only had 3 losing seasons in there. One was this past year when they went 8-9. Of course, they were that missed field goal kick away on Sunday night, though, from winning the division, going 9-8. But he won 6 division titles in all. He made the playoffs 12 times. Of course, he won that Super Bowl back in the 2012 season. Won more than 60% of his games there. That's very good in the NFL. Now, this news has not been confirmed by the team or the coach yet. And it's still unclear whether Harbaugh would be resigning or the team would be getting rid of him themselves. Either way, he instantly becomes the most coveted head coach available, if so. Now, if you remember, we were talking yesterday about yesterday being Black Monday in the NFL with 4 coaches being fired. So this would be the 5th since the end of the regular season. Plus, we had 2 during the season. So all in all, there are 7 now head coaching spots available. I would think the other 6 would be near the top of the list, but we'll have to see how this shakes out soon.
I mean, big news for sure. This is a Black Monday. Looking at tennis news, though, 45-year-old Venus Williams received a wildcard entry to play in this month's Australian Open. Where will she rank as far as oldest to play in this event?
Yeah, she will be the oldest ever here at age 45. Now, previously, that record, the oldest ever, was held by a 44-year-old Kimiko Dante back in 2015. Now, Williams hasn't actually played this event since 2021, though she's still been semi-active, I should say, on the women's tour since then. Now, she first played this event all the way back in 1998, made it to the quarterfinals there as a 17-year-old, where she lost to Lindsay Davenport. Twice she's made it to the finals here. Both times, though, she lost to her sister, Serena. That was 2003 and 2017. Now, last summer, she became the second oldest player ever to win a tour-level match when she beat Peyton Stearns there. Only the great Martina Navratilova won at an older age. Now, the Australian Open starts on January 18, so less than 2 weeks away here, Tiff.
Coming up.
Shifting gears to college football, though, ESPN is reporting that Ole Miss will have their offensive coordinator and running backs coach on hand despite their departure to LSU for Ole Miss's playoff game Thursday night. What is the significance of this?
I mean, this whole thing is largely unprecedented, really. I mean, to recap, Ole Miss's head coach for the season, Lane Kiffin, left after their 11-1 regular season, and then after that regular season, they got into the playoffs, but he left before the playoffs started for LSU. He took some assistants with him, and 2 of those assistants, offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss Jr. and running backs coach Kevin Smith, the 2 you mentioned there, Tiff, both were 2 of those that left for LSU. Now, meanwhile, another assistant defensive coordinator, Pete Golding, was promoted to Ole Miss's head coach. But of course, you can't easily replace your offensive coordinator at the end of the season just in time for the playoffs and expect the team to be successful. It takes time for the team to install a new offense. Thankfully, they've had their offensive coordinator for the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and it looks like they will have them again versus Miami on Thursday night. This is really LSU, their new employer, that is letting them do this. Rebels, of course, won those first 2 games. It looks like they will get them again. Now, this was reported by ESPN, not confirmed yet. So it's a little strange that you've technically got LSU assistants coaching for Ole Miss in their playoff game Thursday night. But like I said, it's a very unusual situation going on right now.
There's a lot going down on Thursday.
It's a lot going down on Thursday. There's really LSU and Ole Miss versus Miami, if you want to look at it like that.
So does that up the odds?
Well, I personally think Ole Miss is going to win. I mean, they've got a lot to prove right now. I mean, their head coach leaves them right before the playoffs start. I can't remember, the last time I can think of this was like in college basketball in 1989 when Michigan lost their head coach right before they go to the NCAA tournament. They ended up winning the NCAA title. Actually, the athletic director found out the head coach was leaving for another team after the season, so we fired him. Steve Fisher was made head coach. He led them to a national title. So just an FYI too.
Perhaps there's a lot of drive.
Perhaps so. You know, they felt jilted, I would think, the players, you know, because I would think if Kiffin thought they could win the national title, he would have stayed there, right? I mean, it's a pretty big deal winning a national title. But he definitely knows LSU. I understand going to LSU. It's a big football school. You know, you're right in Louisiana where there's a ton of football talent to recruit from. So.
And I'm sure large paycheck.
Yeah. I could keep going on about this if you want.
Well, let's move to college basketball because second-ranked Michigan is one of 10 ranked teams in action tonight.
Yes, the undefeated Wolverines, ranked number 2, play at Penn State tonight, starting very soon, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. They are 21.5-point favorites. FYI, Michigan just 1 point behind number 1 Arizona in the AP Top 25, very close at the top there. Also at 7 p.m., top 25 battle in the ACC. Number 6 Duke will play number 20th ranked Louisville. At the same time, in the SEC, defending champion Florida hosts 18th ranked Georgia. Now the Gators have 5 losses this season, all very close by a total of 15 points. That's just 3 points per game, but they have fallen out of the rankings though. Then at 8 p.m. tonight, 19th ranked Iowa is at Minnesota. At the same time in the Big 12, 25th ranked UCF at Central Florida is at Oklahoma State. Finally, 9 p.m., Texas is at 21st ranked Tennessee, and at the same time in the Big 12, we got a doubleheader there. 14th ranked Texas Tech is at number 7 Houston, and finally TCU is at number 22 Kansas, and that's at 9 p.m. TCU versus Kansas. In case you're wanting to see that game, Tiff.
You have a long night.
I have a very long night. A lot of games to go over. Even with football season ended, my nights on the couch are still getting longer.
Your slate is still full.
It's very full here, Tiff. No rest for the weary.
Well, we always look forward to your updates. So
I know you do.
Well, Davis Oz, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiff.
And that's all for today's news. Round the clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.